Welcome to The Reformed Athlete. I'm Coach KP, and this is your home for taking all of the incredible lessons that we have learned as athletes, taking the good ones with us, leaving the not so good ones behind, so that we can train, fuel, and think like an athlete our entire lives and embrace the identity of being a lifelong athlete. Let's get right into the episode. Welcome back to season 2, you guys. Today we are going to do a topic that has been so highly requested, and I'm really excited to do it. This is very much going to be an episode where I'm riffing on this topic, so we can definitely do more details on this topic, more specific questions that you guys might have in a different episode. But today I am going to lay out my basic tenets and my most important principles for fueling like an athlete, aka the food you're putting in your body, aka your nutrition. Now, the thing about nutrition is that it has become such a nuanced subject because there's so many different schools of thought within the nutrition space. Some people are gung-ho about different diets like carnivore, like keto, like vegan. Some people are gung-ho about count your macros, count your calories. Other people go more the intuitive eating route. And with the amount of people that are so dang proud of their, respective decision, which is good. You should choose something that you enjoy and that you stand behind. But because people are so gung-ho on their perspective and believe that their perspective is the only perspective and that there's not really room for other areas to think when it comes to nutrition, and because there's so much conflicting research, nutrition has become such a confusing space and such an overwhelming space. The good news is, at least from my perspective, if you want to fuel your body like an athlete, if you are spending hours of the week training like an athlete in the gym, you're spending all of this time pushing your body to the max, doing your conditioning workouts, doing your strength workouts, making sure you're doing your active recovery, getting enough sleep, completely reorienting your lifestyle around being this lifelong athlete. If you're taking all of those actions, it's actually really simple what you have to do to keep your body supplemented with fuel. And I understand it doesn't feel that way, so we're going to break some of that down right now. But if you think about nutrition from the perspective of just a couple of core tenets and some very important principles that you want to stick by for your nutrition, this is going to go from being a very big, scary world to understanding that there is so much freedom in nutrition if you allow there to be. And the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to this topic is how so many people think that there is a right and a wrong way to do nutrition based on what you're hearing online. And as I mentioned, there's so many conflicting voices in this space that if you're going to base your nutrition based on what, an online influencer is telling you, you're going to constantly find yourself at odds and with conflicting information and be in the stuck bubble that you're in right now where you don't understand what is best for you. Now, when you take a step back from the very, very loud and proud opinions that are online and you understand this concept, this idea right here, that fueling like an athlete, the best way to fuel like an athlete is to do what is best for your specific body, for your specific situation. And I understand that that's very freeing because you go, okay, amazing. I don't have to listen to all of these voices online anymore. I can actually choose what I want to do with my nutrition. There's no right or wrong here. I can't mess this up. I can't fail it. I just got to do what's best for me. That's amazing. There's so much freedom in that. There's so much power in that. On the flip side, on the other side of that, there's also a lot of overwhelm with that because now you're going, okay, so I have no compass. What direction am I supposed to go? If I'm just basing this 100% on how my body feels, how do I know what my body feels? There's too much to do now. There's too much information that I need to learn. There's too many steps to take, and I'm overwhelmed, and I don't have a beginning point. I don't have a starting point. That's what we're going to talk about today, because as I share my core tenets of nutrition and as I share the principles that I live and breathe by, you guys are going to be able to take this and apply it to your own life. So the first thing that I want to start with is my personal philosophy. So this is something that is unbelievably important to me when it comes to nutrition. And I do credit my amazing mother for this because I was raised in a household where there was not a lot of toxic messaging around food. We were very much a food freedom type household. And she ingrained this concept in me from a very young age of balance. Of if you have some healthy food, you can have some unhealthy food. If you have some unhealthy food, eat some healthy food too. Eat the foods that are quote unquote good for you. And I spent from a very young age a lot of time trying to understand what was quote unquote good for me versus what wasn't the best for me, or what was considered junk food versus what was considered healthy food. And I think through navigating that journey and understanding, I learned that there's so much gray area within nutrition, because not everything can just be plain labeled good versus bad. Everything kind of has a time and a place, and it's very situational. Depending on, the food at hand, it's very situational when that food is going to be good for you, what it's going to be good for, how it's going to be utilized by your body. And so having such a healthy mindset around what food is doing for my body, and not being surrounded by a lot of messaging based on how I look, based on how my weight was changing, based on how my body was changing. Like, my mother did an incredible job keeping that messaging and those types of words out of our household. We did not focus on that where I grew up. We didn't have that in my household. And I really, truly believe that created such an incredible platform for me to have a healthy relationship with food as a result. So for those of you that don't relate to that, for those of you that might have the almond moms, or the people that made you feel kind of bad about yourself, or the coaches that made you feel like you were constantly being ridiculed for your size and for your body, or for, those of you that have gone down the rabbit hole of online nutrition that's telling you this is wrong, this is right, this is right, this is wrong, you're a failure if you do this, you're amazing if you do this, whatever it is, allow me to reparent some of your nutrition programming with this philosophy. Now, the philosophy that I have learned that I feel so good with, and I love that I do it, and I teach this to my clients as well, and they have also grown so fond of this philosophy, is the 80-20 principle. Now, the 80-20 principle states that 80% of your diet, 80% of the food that you are consuming into your body is going to be whole or minimally processed foods, while 20% is going to be whatever the heck else you want. Now, to break that down in a little bit more of a practical way, 80% of the food that you're consuming is going to be foods that, you could find in nature. Does it grow from the ground? Does it roam in nature? Did it have to go through a processing plant to be created, or could you go find this at your local farmer's market? So the foods that fall within the 80% category are going to be fruits, vegetables, meats, some dairies, some grains. You understand the idea there. What I love about this philosophy, the 80-20 rule, is that most of the time you are putting food in your body that it's going to support your performance, that is going to support your best gut health, that is going to support your best hormone health, that is going to support your best neurological health, that is going to support the best recovery possible so that you're not feeling inflamed and super bloated all the time so that you can't even move your body. 80% of the foods you're putting into your body are very intentionally supporting you and making you feel your best. But this is the important part. The reason that we have 20% as opposed to 100% is because nobody's going to be perfect. And honestly, who the hell wants to be perfect? Like, unless you're Tom freaking Brady and you don't put a processed sugar in your body for a decade, sometimes you want to celebrate a birthday cake, or you want to make fresh baked cookies for your grandparents. I do that every Sunday. It's one of my favorite parts of my week. Or you want to make that really cool recipe that you saw pop up in your TikTok feed, and it's Teeny's mac and cheese and you're all over it. Like, hi, me too. That sounds great. So when you allow yourself the space to use food as not just the fuel for your body, but also the social aspect, like me making cookies for my grandparents, or you have a get together, a potluck with your friends, and you make like this crazy buffalo chicken dip that has 8 different sauces and 3 different cheeses and whatever in it, but it's delicious. Or sometimes this comes from a religious perspective, from a spiritual perspective, from a cultural perspective. Food primarily being used as fuel is what's going to help us feel our best in our body. And food having opportunities and moments of socializing, getting in touch with your culture, experiencing memories with your family, having a beautiful dinner with friends. Food is allowed to be multi-purposeful. Food is allowed to serve multiple functions in your life. And when you're an athlete, you need a lot of fuel. I get that. You need so much fuel because you're doing so much and you're using your body in the most amazing ways and you want to support that. So just do that most of the time. And then spend some of the time not feeling bad if you don't have a vegetable. Or not feeling bad if you decide, you know what, add the milkshake onto that meal. That sounds delicious. It allows this complete freedom because nothing's ever off limits. And most of the time, you're doing the things that make you feel supported in your goals. And you'll understand that if you spend most of the time, a majority of the time, following the principles that are going to help your body feel the best, then you have opened opportunity for that 20% to exist where there's no guilt. your body's not going to change, your performance is not going to suffer, and your energy's not going to tank. Because most of the time, you're doing the things that are meant to make you feel the best. This is so important, and I want this concept to resonate, because nothing else I say today is going to matter if you don't understand the 80-20 principle. The 80-20 principle is freedom, it is a lack of restriction, and it is empowerment through your food choices. Because you get to live this incredible free life. That is my entire point of training like an athlete and fueling like an athlete, is to have freedom in your body, to have freedom outside of the gym, to have freedom outside of the kitchen, to have freedom in your life, to live the ways that you want to live. That's the point. That's the whole point of all of this. So if you're gonna train for freedom, you also have to fuel for freedom. That's important. Okay? So allow that concept to marinate. If we're playing with our little food puns here, allow that concept to sit with you. See how you can digest it. I'll stop. And allow me to move on to my next principle. This is more of a behavior. This is more of a tenet of how I choose to use my nutrition, but there's a little caveat. I do not track my calories or my macros. Now, let me very much start by saying, if you track your calories and your macros and you love it and it feels so good and you love your results and you feel so good in your body, amazing. I'm so happy for you. That's so awesome. I do not track my macros or my calories currently because that does not align with the stage of life that I am in. And I think a lot of former athletes turning into lifelong athletes are going to relate to that. If you're a busy mom, sometimes you don't have an opportunity to whip out the scale at every meal and see how much each of your foods weigh. If you're not in that season of life, I don't want you to feel guilty about it, because we're going to go over how to make decisions that are best going to fuel your body without needing to count macros or calories. As I say this, please understand that I actually do think there is an incredible amount of value in counting calories and macros for a short period of time. If you count it consistently for 1 to 3 months, maybe land for 2 months in the middle, if you feel good about that. If you count calories for a little bit and start to understand how much you're consuming based over a period of tracking, you start to understand how much protein you're getting from this size chicken. You're starting to understand how many carbohydrates you're getting from this portion of rice. You're starting to understand if you eat this meal and this breakfast and this lunch with this snack, this is about how many calories you're getting throughout the day. I think that's a very important skill to build, because you can make sure that you're never under fueling and you can make sure that you're never overindulging. And so kind of finding that Goldilocks skill of being able to determine how much food is best for you based on how much you're training, based on how you're feeling, based on how your energy is throughout the day. I think there is a lot of value in learning how to count your macros and at least sticking with that for a little while. Again, 1 to 3 months. You don't really need more than that. You don't need to be somebody that counts for years. You can if you want, but if you want to take more of the freedom approach and you're in a season of your life where counting macros doesn't feel good for you, totally get it. Spend a period of time at some point to understand portions and to understand amounts, and then take a step away and just use the general principle of what you've learned. I think there's a lot of value in that. An alternative to counting macros, which is what I use, and I really recommend this to everybody, and it's the concept of using your hands to assess your portion sizing. So for protein, they're saying that, if you have a chicken or a steak or a fish or whatever it is, use your fist to determine. 1 fist-sized amount of that protein is 1 serving of protein. So if you're having chicken breast and you have a fist-sized piece of chicken breast, okay, that's 1 serving of protein. So okay, well, if I'm in a high-protein diet or if I'm in a high-protein phase of life, I'm working out of the gym, I'm training like an athlete, I want to support my muscle-growing demands, then what I'm going to do is have 2 fist-sized portions of protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because then I know I'm consistently fueling my body with adequate protein throughout the day. And maybe I'll supplement it with a protein shake or a high-protein Greek yogurt snack in the middle of the day or in the evening. And what that does is it helps you not necessarily need to step on a scale, or not necessarily need to put your food on a scale, I should say. But it does allow you to get a general idea, an inkling of how much you're consuming. That way you're not under-consuming your protein, and you can get a feel for what you're putting in your body. In the same way, you want to grab a fistful of veggies, and that's 1 serving of veggies. So if you made roasted broccoli, mushrooms, and peppers, one of my favorite combinations. If you roast that on a sheet pan and you're trying to determine how much you should put on your plate, grab 2 to 3 fistfuls of that veggie. Or roughly, you don't have to grab it with your fist if you're not about that, but you can start roughly estimating based on these portion sizes. And so that's a really great way of loosely tracking how much you're eating without having to put numbers on it, without having to put it in an app, and without having to make it a total headache, again, if that's not where you're at right now. You can also grab, I think it's a palm-sized portion of carbohydrates, so potatoes, pasta, rice, etc. And you would want to do, depending on how busy you are, I currently am somebody that goes better off of a high carb diet than a low carb diet. I would probably grab 2 palm-sized portions of carbohydrates at my meals. And so that creates 2 fist-sized portions of protein, 2 to 3 fistfuls of vegetables, and then 2 palm-sized portions of carbohydrates. Now I have carbohydrates, now I have protein, and now I have my micronutrients and my vegetables at each meal, and I'm set. And just because I didn't mention it there, you're likely going to be getting your fat sources from your protein if you're eating an animal-based protein. But if you do want to make sure that you have enough fat at each meal, you use the tip of your thumb. The top of your thumb, use a thumb-sized portion of fat. So that could be olive oil, avocado, nuts, and seeds, etc. So let me transition that into, for those of you that don't know, the 3 main macronutrients are protein, carbohydrates, and fat. I think if you're watching that, you understand this by now. What I do want to go over, though, is what the function of each of those macronutrients is, so you can understand why you're eating it. Now, protein, you can think of these as your little builders. These are your little Bob the Builders that you are consuming, because when you're at the gym and you're doing all of this really hard work and you're pushing your body and you're so exhausted after, that's because your body has gone through the ringer to create some future muscle growth and development for you. Now, the thing is, what the gym does is it creates a little bitty baby micro tears in your muscles. So you can imagine just like a little tear. And Bob the Builder has to come in and fix that tear so that it can be a bigger, stronger muscle after. Well, if you're not consuming protein, you don't have any Bob the Builders to send to your muscle. So if you want to make sure that there's a team coming in and making your muscle bigger and stronger, then you have to consume protein. An additional benefit of protein is that it's very satiating, aka it makes you feel full. So this is something that when you have a high protein meal, you're going to feel full for a longer period of time. That's going to be less snacking. That's going to be less energy crashes. It's going to be less sugar cravings, which can be really beneficial for people that are trying to really, follow that 80-20 disciplined lifestyle. Now, that's protein. We understand protein's super important. I think most people undereat protein, and I think a lot of people could benefit from more protein just because of the incredible benefits that it has on your overall health as well as your muscular health. But transitioning into our next macronutrient, we're going to talk about carbohydrates. This is the most controversial macronutrient of all time because in the 90s, everybody decided that carbohydrates make you fat. And we have since debunked that, and we've since understood that as long as your overall calories are within the limits that they're supposed to be, then you can have as many of each macronutrient as you want. But if you're talking about ideally fueling your body for performance and ideally fueling your body at the gym as a result of all this incredible training you're doing as a lifelong athlete, then carbohydrates are going to be unbelievably important for you because carbohydrates are your primary source of energy, especially when you're doing a sprint, a medicine ball exercise, a plyometric, a heavy lift. You are primarily using carbohydrates to fuel that activity. And so since you're doing so much of this throughout the week, you want to make sure that you are fueling your carbohydrates throughout the week as well. Now, depending on the person, I personally respond really well off of a high carb diet. My body uses it like that. I need to refuel my carbs all the time. Some people, though they still need carbs as, someone training like an athlete, they don't need as many carbs. So this is where you get to start to play around and see, okay, does a full cup of rice make sense or does a half cup of rice make sense? Should I have the full potato or should I have half the potato? Your body, based on how you feel after your meal, based on how bloated you are, based on how much mental clarity you have, based on your energy levels and how long they sustain, and then based on how you feel in the gym, based on how much energy you have for your workouts. These are the key signs you want to be keeping an eye out for that your body's communicating with you, because that's going to tell you, okay, yes, I have enough carbs, or I have too many carbs, or I don't have enough carbs. So you have to play around a little bit to see how your body best responds to that. Unfortunately, that's not information I can just tell you as a blanket statement. That is something that you're going to have to do some self-discovery with, but you'll start to see pretty quickly how your body responds to different amounts of carbohydrates in your diet. And carbohydrates are going to be the things like breads, pastas, potatoes. So we definitely need carbohydrates for our energy demands. And because you're an athlete and you're an active person, you're going to need more carbohydrates than maybe somebody else would. Now, finally, transitioning into our final macronutrient that we are going to discuss in this context, it is fat. Fat is going to be the absolute best micronutrient for sustaining energy, for hormone health, and for neurological health. Now, a lot of people don't realize how important this macronutrient is. And a lot of people, unfortunately, still associate fat with being fat. So they think if you eat, if you eat fat, you're going to become fat. That's really not the case. No one macronutrient is going to make you heavier than another macronutrient. It's all about your overall caloric intake for the day. But what fat does is it plays an incredibly important role in your overall health because of its effect on your neurological and your hormonal health. So, especially for my ladies listening, you need to make sure that you are eating adequate levels of fat, because I don't have to be the one to tell you that our hormones dictate a lot about our life and our daily wellness. If you want a healthy cycle, you need to be eating adequate fat. If all people that I'm speaking to right now want to have healthy neurological health, then you want to be eating a healthy amount of fat. Fat is also going to be the thing that fuels our sustained energy. So, sitting at your desk throughout the day, going for a longer walk, going for an extended period of time on a run, anything kind of lower intensity that you do for an extended period of time, that is what fat is primarily going to be fueling. So if you get a lot of energy crashes throughout the day, if you find yourself getting a lot of brain fog, if you find yourself just absolutely crashing out at different points throughout the day, that is what fat is going to really help with. So fat and protein both are going to help with those energy crashes and keeping your blood sugar and your energy levels and your metabolic health at a more stable point throughout the entire day. So now you get a feel for why you need protein, why you need carbs, and why you need fat. And you understand that all three of them are absolutely crucial. You understand how to do your portion sizing, whether it's a fist-sized portion of protein, a palmful of carbs, a handful of vegetables, or just a thumb size of fat. You guys can start to see how building your meals using this portion sizing and using this principle of making sure that we have all of these macronutrients included at all of our major meals are best going to fuel your body as somebody that is very active and as somebody that is training like an athlete. Now, when it comes to your training specifically, you want to think about having something very easy to digest before your workout. So maybe within 30 minutes of you hitting the gym, that's when you want to have something like a piece of toast with peanut butter, a banana with peanut butter, an apple, something that has a lot of sugars in it, something that has carbohydrates that you can digest really quickly and then utilize for fuel during your workout. And then after your workout, you primarily want to think about replenishing those carbohydrates that you just used during your workout, as well as fueling up on protein so that your little Bob the Builders can come in and help your muscles grow big and strong. Now, you guys have been given a lot of strategy. You've also been given philosophy. And at the end of the day, I want you to just remember that your body is meant to consume food, so we don't want to restrict it. And it's also meant to utilize the fuel you're giving it, so you don't want to overeat without enough activity to sustain what you are consuming. So there is a balance. It is all about seeing how your body responds to this balance. And it's about playing with the variables. Do you need more carbs or less carbs? Should we add more protein in if you want to see more muscle growth? Do you need more fat at breakfast so that you have less energy crashes throughout the day? Do you want to add a protein shake in before bed to help stabilize your metabolism overnight so that you can sleep better, so you can recover better? There's all kinds of factors that we can play with when it comes to consuming food that are going to best fuel our performance as athletes, and understanding that all of this can occur with the mindset of, I'm doing this for my best health. I'm doing this so I can feel the best. I'm doing this so that I can get the absolute best results possible, so that I can live the freest life, so that I can enjoy life to the fullest. Having that mindset mixed with this strategy is how you find freedom in your nutrition. It is how you make it simple and you don't have to get so hyper obsessed with all of the gurus are saying online. And this is how you just feel the best as a lifelong athlete. So I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any specific questions about topics that I covered here, whether it's portion sizing, whether it's building your plates, whether it is, the function of the macronutrients, whether it's balancing it throughout a busy day, please ask in the comments. You guys can also send me a DM on Instagram. You can join my Instagram broadcast channel, the Train Like an Athlete channel, because I do ask you guys' specific opinions in polls and question boxes within that community so that I can get your direct input on what you would like to see. That's actually why we had the plyometric episode recently. It's why we're having this nutrition episode. It's because I'm directly listening to what you guys want out of me for this podcast so that we can all get the absolute best out of this and be the best lifelong athletes that we can. So join the Instagram broadcast channel. Make sure to comment any questions that you have specifically on nutrition, or if you want me to break down anything in more detail. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel because it helps me reach more athletes just like you. Send it to your friends and family if you feel like they would benefit from this information. And I've had so much fun doing this. I'm excited to continue my 10-day podcast series and then continue the podcast weekly beyond that. You guys are the absolute best. I cannot even tell you how much I appreciate and think it's just crazy that people are coming and listening to me yap for so long. It means the world. I'm glad that it's benefiting you and impacting you. I've heard a couple of you reaching out to me saying how much this podcast has been helping you, which means the world to me. Truly, it means the world to me. So if you are here, just understand how grateful I am for you. Like and subscribe to the channel as a token of appreciation for me. And I will see you guys for our next episode of The Reformed Athlete.